It's Sid Chats. Welcome back to my channel. I have been gone for way too long. I am so sorry this video got delayed by a couple of months, but I promise that I am back and I have a ton of really fun YouTube videos to talk to you about and kind of yap about with you guys. So let's get into the first one. For the past few months, I've wanted to talk about two very specific characters. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to discuss and kind of dig into, I realized that the ethos of why I wanted to talk about these characters were really the same. So I decided to kind of do a deep dive into the portrayals of young black boys in media, and why I might have felt really drawn to these two particular young men. To really discuss and dig into, and why they're some of my favorite portrayals of black teens in media. So I did some research and I really enjoyed doing that research. I'm going to pull some of that into our conversation today, but I also felt like I needed to talk to black boys about, or former black boys mostly because I am an adult, but talk to some black men, one black teen that's my little cousin, to just dig deep into kind of the portrayals, how they felt about their own representation. I kind of had some feelings about it from my own perspective as a black woman and how I feel about the representation of black people in general, but really to help inform my take in what the research was saying and hear it from the perspective of the people that are trying to be depicted in these stories. So today we're going to do just that. We're going to talk about Jamal Turner from On My Block and Justin from Forever, who is just the sweetest baby bean. If you haven't seen Forever on Netflix, please log in and watch him. We're going to talk about what they kind of say that feels different than what we particularly see in black boys in media, what makes those two characters unique and special in their own ways, and then just a little bit about representation in general and what I learned from those conversations with the black men in my life. So let's get into it. So let's start with Jamal from On My Block. When we meet him, it is the very first episode of the series, and he is a rising ninth grader. Over the course of the series, we get to see him evolve from this really quirky, funny kid who is terrified of disappointing his father, with a pretty valid fear of joining the high school football team. And he also has a dream of finding this notorious, potentially fictional roller world money that is buried somewhere in his neighborhood. He's seen as a bit of a clown of his friend group and the least mature. And throughout the series, we see him kind of grow and evolve. He finds the roller world money, spoiler alert. He deals with some very serious stuff, that whole crew does, and becomes the school football star. I know, not what you would have expected based on the, season one assessment that I shared. I think what's really refreshing to me about Jamal is that often I don't get to see black boys as silly, fun characters. There's obviously many that exist out there in the world. Jamal is not the first and he won't be the last. But typically in a friend group or a friend series like this that has like a lot of different people or a lot of different kind of archetypes within it, they tend to be the kind of one that's lived the most life, maybe is a little bit more worldly, understands what's happening outside of their world a little bit more, or outside of their own head a little bit more. But he gets to be, the funniest friend. He gets to be the really clever friend. He's the one who's searching for the roll money, figuring out the clues, searching around the neighborhood. He's also just a very smart character throughout the series, and that's something that he's kind of spotlighted for, especially at the end with Kendra. He gets to be resourceful. He's really good with like adults and grown-ups. He built a very close and intimate relationship with Abuelita. And from the guys that I talked to, who I'll pull in clips from throughout this, they really spotlighted Jamal, if they had seen the show, as someone who really stood out to them as someone a little bit different.
What I remember him being a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
I remember him being funny. I remember him being semi-carefree. And I remember him making mistakes that were not necessary, did not have the same gravity as some of the other characters in other TV shows I watched. It's like another show that I love is Grand Army.
Yeah.
And the young black characters in Grand Army were making like just really careless, stupid and I didn't see them able to reconcile and learn from those mistakes in the same way that I saw that happen from On My Block.
But it felt like Jamal feels like he would be like one of my actual cousins because like they would have been somewhere in the hood for like 5 minutes, then get a little gas in their chest, and then all of a sudden, oh, he feel like a big shot, especially playing football. All my families play football.
I would say one, the family aspect for sure. I mean, obviously, like the whole entire stigma around two parent black household. And we have all heard that in various lines of media and entertainment, obviously. But like, he has two parents at home, and they seem mostly functional as a family. Outside of his antics, honestly. His dad owns what, the barbecue spot or whatever it is, and like owns a family business, which I think is also like part of some of like a little bit of what shows up a lot in TV shows and movies too. Like a lot of the black families will have an uncle who owns this, or auntie who owns the nail salon or like the beauty salon, or like barbershop. Obviously, as a movie, like his dad owns the barbershop. Like there's some sort of black owned business type of vibe to it. So I think like that aspect of it for sure rings true for Jamal, just from a family aspect. And then I think like from a personal aspect, I think what he deals with, it's a little bit also interesting because it's LA, and like obviously I'm not from LA. I'm going to speak outside of my mouth, but a lot of my friends who are from LA or from that part of California speak to the fact that like it's a very diverse place, but also in the fact that like it's heavily run by Latinx people and that culture, and so I think like a little bit of Jamal kind of comes through as those are his friends, those are his close friends in the show, obviously, but then he has like the weird black girl who keeps following him around out of nowhere, and he's like, "What is happening?" But then once he orients himself and just like, why is she staring at me in general? I think he starts to like actually have a connection with her. So I think like the interesting concept of just like feeling like the other in places, like trying to actually acclimate to your surroundings as a black teen or a black individual. And then once you find that person you can anchor yourself with, you kind of take heed to that. A lot of times it isn't a black person.
I think that the tone of On My Block also lends itself to just a little bit more levity than you would expect for a show about a kid who is like living in the hood for all intents and purposes. And they really spotlighted Jamal as a character that felt really refreshing, especially when the show started in the mid 2010s, because the other issue with black boys in media is that we don't necessarily see a lot of them in general, and when they are in a friendship comedy like this, I think about Lucas in Stranger Things. I don't know much about him, and so he doesn't really get to play a role in the group. Like, I feel like Lucas is kind of an afterthought in a lot of places in Stranger Things, in a way that Jamal gets to really be his own character with his own storylines and his own life beyond this greater, we have to defeat this evil or find the roller money. He's really the impetus to that narrative. Justin from Forever. I feel insanely protective of this character. If you say anything negative about Justin from Forever, I generally tend to defend him with all of my heart. And he's a fictional character, so it's not healthy at all. When I watched this, I was a 27-year-old woman. Now I'm 28, but like, it's not normal for me to care this much about this fictional teenage boy. But when we meet Justin, he is a junior in high school, and reconnects with an elementary school classmate, Keisha. Do not worry, a Keisha video is coming. Who he goes on to start a relationship with. And while that relationship is not the focus of this video, and it is the focus of the series, it's one of my favorite examples of what makes Justin so special. When I think about the ships, the relationships, the black ships of my youth, I always think about like a Dwayne and Whitley, Cliff and Claire, unfortunately. We don't necessarily get to see like a Dwayne Wayne be devastated. He has like, when he and Whitley break off their engagement, he kind of plays it cool. We know he's hurt, but we never see like Dwayne cry like, "Oh, it's over, man," or "I'm gonna lose her," even before he blows up that lady's wedding. Like that's not what we get to see. And obviously Dwayne is a few years older, but not that much older than Justin in Forever. We get to see Justin be heartbroken when he climbs into the bed in his shoes still after the prom incident. I just devastated. Like he gets to, tell a girl about his hobbies that like in my world are not different for black boys. I know plenty of black boys who love anime and comic books and basketball and all of these things, but he gets to, be vulnerable and share it and get teased and not feel defensive and just I love Justin. I love Forever. He's just like a little dweeb and we love him. He gets to show his struggles with learning disabilities without them being the main plot of the show. He gets to be what is largely depicted as ADHD and dyslexic. A lot of viewers, including myself, believe that there is, and other characters in the show, that there is a level of like ADHD, so autism and ADHD within his character. But he gets to show those things. And my favorite thing about Justin is he also is like a solid moral character. When he hears about the tape of Keisha circling around, he doesn't ask to see it. He doesn't, shame her. He says, "That's messed up that they doing that. Why would you do that?" Which is just a word to Miss Dawn, his mother, that she raised such a good boy. And so like he understands the kind of gravity of that situation. And I think less guys that I were talking to knew of that show. I think it is because it is a romance. It is produced by Mara Brock Akil, who is best known for her shows that tend to have a more female audience. It's an adaptation of a Judy Blume book, so it's also a author who has a largely younger teenage audience. While I never read Forever, I was raised by a Judy Blume super fan, my mother. So it's just one of those things where I think my husband saw it because I watched it. One of his friends watched it because I told him to watch it. And so, but the guys who did see Forever also kind of noted that Justin felt very refreshing in my husband's case in particular. Like a character that really felt like one of the first times he saw himself depicted on TV is something that he said when we were doing our first viewing. I have seen Forever multiple times since. But like our first viewing is like this was the most represented he felt. And he was 29 when the show came out. He's since turned 30. And I think that that's just like such a big deal, even when you're 30 or 29, seeing a teenager, a 17, 16, 17 girl who reminds you of the person that you were back then and that you hadn't seen that kind of shown or illustrated to the world before. And I love that for them.
I feel like I can relate to Justin in the way of like just being that nerdy black kid, like the kid that's typically not, I guess, popular or like chosen. I can relate in that sense, like him having, um, what is it? I don't want to say cognitive issues, ADHD or whatever he had, if I recall.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
neurodivergence. Yeah.
yeah, that and so yeah, that and just having like those, having to navigate those while still being black, and being a man and being all those other things I think can relate with in the show on that aspect. As far as high school and all the things that he did in high school, definitely did not do all of that. But I think I can relate with that. I did appreciate his character and that character development throughout the show. I think you could see him kind of like coming into himself and like going through and learning lessons and going through experiences throughout the show, which is definitely appreciated because I feel like not a lot of shows get to see young black male men rather do that, especially do that in the realm of mental health and all these other things that come into play. Even like having a girlfriend and like what that entails.
I just love the way that they did that show. Um, with not just having like a TV show with just a regular black boy, but given the struggles of a black boy, like with him having ADHD, overcoming that, having relationship problems, liking Keisha, having issues with his mom, and things like that. I just love how they did the show.
because it showed two sides of black boyhood that really isn't shown, which is awkwardness, to be honest.
And I want to say this isn't the first time that there's been good representation, and it's not the end all be all. One of the questions I asked the guys was, what was the first show that made you feel represented? And I got a lot of expected answers, like Static. I think I got Static Shock. If I didn't, it came up within the conversation. And characters who were black from throughout stories, but they often weren't the lead, and more so a character that these guys were really projecting themselves onto or aspired to be like, which I think is beautiful, especially young, but they weren't characters who had stories and narrative a lot of the time, or they were characters who weren't necessarily black, but maybe were aliens and things like that that you could project blackness or representation onto, which again I don't think is a bad thing, but is kind of duplicative of the or indicative of the kind of lack of representation we've had historically, and why characters like Jamal and Justin are so important to support and watch and talk about and kind of, you know, lift up, because then we can really get more of them. We can get more complex depictions of black boys in media. But like I said, this isn't the first time that there's been good representation. The guys I interviewed named some great characters, but they weren't central to the story, even if some of them are beloved and they're loved by me. Sometimes the characters weren't even black, but just not racialized. The Cowardly Dog.
Yes.
I'm not even going to ask follow-up questions.
No. I'm going to explain this. Because was Courage really that cowardly?
As a black male being in a movie as big as Black Panther is, I would say that definitely represented the black community, especially as a black male doing something big. Not only are you doing something big in the acting career, but in the movie you are like standing up as a leader.
Ooh, that didn't happen until I was much older. I think it was Jamal, I think it was the name from Pose.
Are you someone who looks like you?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think his name is Jamal. His name is Damien, right?
Yeah, it was Damien. No, the actor's name is Jamal.
Yes. Yeah.
Looking at shows like Hey Arnold or something, and seeing like Gerald, who's best friends, and I don't know, it's something about seeing like characters like Gerald or something, and just like how like his skin color wasn't kind of like wasn't mentioned like that for him.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of treated him regularly, and he was kind of the cool kid. He was like the guy everybody kind of looked up to, and he was kind of the popular kid. And like I said, his skin color kind of wasn't like the main talking point. But
I also dived into Reddit, which can be dangerous, but I wanted to know the sentiment of black men beyond kind of my sphere. So I looked in the black men subreddit, and there actually were conversations like this already happening, honestly, in real time to the time that I was kind of researching for this video. And honestly, they're just as disappointed as I was, or some of the guys that I talked to are. Of the positives you see, even after I had done that initial deep dive, they're being retconned, at least if the kind of trailers for the new Marvel kind of big Avengers movie is supposed to be done. Like one of them named, or a couple of them named, Anthony Mackie as Captain America as like a really good move of representation. And it looks like Chris Evans is back, so, and taking his shield. So these things are just kind of happening. The Opportunity Agenda looked into black male representation and found that all media types presented a distorted view of black males. And that's not just in fiction and like TV and movies, but also sports. You have video games. That has been shown to show an impact on self-concept and external opinion. So not only does it impact the self-concept of the black boys who are looking for media to consume, it's also impacting the way that the world sees these black boys when they go into the world. And that's why more people in general should have access to characters like a Justin, so that you don't necessarily just see, if you live in a place that has low diversity, or you're from a family that maybe isn't as open or educated or informed about these things and giving you that information, there's things that can be informed through media. That's why representation matters. I talk a lot about in my personal life, and I mentioned it in my most recent video about Glee, that there was an increase in support for gay marriage after watching a Kurt or a Blaine kind of find love and get married on Glee. There's impact in the media that we consume and the media that the world puts out there. And I think now more than ever, this is a really important discussion.
Now, I would say a little bit just with the lack of, I would say, overall black shows that we have going on right now. I know we have, I mean, On My Block's not even a black show. That show's,
Multicultural.
yeah, it's multicultural. It's definitely people of color. Yeah, and over. Forever is one, but I would say like in the early 2000s and the 90s, it seemed like there was just way more variety in black shows. So, like, personally, as far as me feeling underrepresented, I think so. I think Justin is very close to what I would think I was when I was a teenager. But then I think there needs to be more of that. I think there needs to be more Justins for black boys. I think there need to be more Keishas for black girls. I think that just overall there's a lacking of black stories that we're getting right now. It's very disappointing because it seems like we move backwards, which is crazy.
It's very rare that you get a layered character in TV and film as a black boy, black man, whatever it is, that is also not rooted in trauma. Which I think, and some people can say, right, trauma is part of the experience, trauma is part of the story, which in some instances it is. But I think, like, it would be good, in my opinion, to get a character that experiences all the different emotions it can experience as a teenager in a circumstance where they don't like the other person around them, or they do like other people around them, but they're inadequate in some particular way. They're short, they're not as smart, or whatever it may be. You're laughing, but I'm serious. But I think, like, it's very rare that you get that, and I think we got a lot as like teenagers or like preteens in a way, like through your Disney channels, your Nickelodeons, etc., with a lot of the live action stuff that came about. But even then, right, like a lot of the black characters were side characters. Raven-Symoné being the exception of like comic relief. Like, you're there for comic relief. You're there as the zany person attached to the core characters or the protagonists. And that is your job, or you use as a plot device to move things along. And so I think, like, it's very rare that we get that, and I think, like, that's why I would say, like, more so underrepresented. It's not necessarily like people didn't try. It's just that we didn't have as many reps in a way of just like some of those characters.
I guess in media, people just, I mean, trauma sells because is entertainment. Because you like to see people just go from a rags to riches story, or people just deal with so much and just like rise to the ranks and just like grow up and move up from like some harsh environment or something like that. But not everybody starts off like that. Like I used to joke with my mom, be like, I'll tell my mom, like, oh, I came from the streets. I ain't have no pot to piss in it. And she'd be like, boy, shut up. They grew up.
Before I sign off, this is editing Sid, just to say that I fully forgot to thank the guys for participating in this video. So I really appreciate them sharing their perspectives. I think that they gave us gems. I was not able to use nearly as much footage as I got from them, so I hope that I did what they shared with me justice. And now back to me for the outro. So what about you? How do you feel about representation? Who's your favorite, black character, male, female, non-binary? How do you feel about how representation is kind of going these days? Let me know in the comments. I will be back so soon. I am already in progress on the next couple of videos, honestly. If you miss me between uploads, I have a Substack newsletter where I write about a bevy of things. So, I'll link that in the description. But I am so thankful that you guys watch and let me yap to you about my various interests. And thank you for watching this video. Bye.